What's going on, Vikings fans? This is Skol for Days and exclusively on Purple and Gold for Days. I'm your host, Justin, and this is my compatriot, Mike Castellino. Thank you kindly. It is good to have you with us. It's been 1 week since the Vikings summarily got dismissed at home to the New York Giants. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about, some defensive coordinator being fired, some press conference, and maybe we'll touch a little bit on the games and maybe a little bit about what we think is going to happen here in the next few weeks. Vis-a-vis the rest of the NFL playoffs, as well as what direction we think the Vikings are going. But first, my compatriot Mike Castellino, the king of Vikings spaces, albeit on hiatus for a minute or two. Mike, what's going on, my friend? How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Just the spaces will have to take a break until the Super Bowl. I want to enjoy some football and not have to go crazy about this team for a couple of weeks. That's not a bad thing. I had to, deal with some craziness all season with certain friends that I'm not going to get into details on any further. So, yeah.
What's up, Vikings? Jerome, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you. Put your comments in there. Tell us what you want to talk about. Tell us what you want to think. Well, let's just get right off the finality of it all, as John Madden would say when teams get eliminated. The finality of the 1 year abject failure of an experiment that was Vikings defensive coordinator Ed Donatell. Let me just say it like this real quick. This was a disaster right up front. The scheme did not fit the personnel. Ed Donatell, like Mike Zimmer, his time had come and gone. Too old school, didn't know how to adjust. All of that is well and good, and he deserved to go. I mean, no disrespect to an individual, talking about a job. I'm just talking about the reality of the situation. That being said, if anybody here wants to completely put all of this on Ed Donatell, he said the same things last season when it was Mike Zimmer. Oh, it's Mike Zimmer's fault. He's too old, doesn't know this. We just need to get a new coach. Well, we had the same players we had last year, barring a couple of additions in Zadarius Smith and Jordan Hicks. And we're basically the same bottom 2 or 3 team defensively rankings, passing, rushing yards, scoring, everything. So if anybody thinks we're just going to bring in all these defensive coordinators that we're going to try and interview, and that's going to change everything, I got news for you. The talent on this defense is old, barring a couple players here and there. The talent on this defense is overpaid vis-a-vis how much their liability is towards the salary cap. So if you think we're just going to get a new defensive coordinator and that's going to fix things, I believe we said the same thing about 365 days ago here. So while we need to throw some of the shade at Ed Donatell, deservedly so. What's up, Dave? Thanks for joining us. Shout out to Dave as well. As always, thanks for joining us. Let's save some for the players too, Mike, because at the end of the day, the only thing different about this defense this year and last year is that they got turnovers at key times. That is quite literally the only thing that
in
was
the 2 minutes.
Yep. In the 2 minutes. So they were clutch at certain points, got some turnovers here and there, but by and large, this defense was the same. Now, yes, you got a little bit more production out of your offense, which is why you flipped the script on all those one-score losses into one-score wins. But if anybody thinks that, we're just going to bring in a new guy, we're going to go back to the 4-3, whatever else, this team has more problems as defensive coordinator. What say you, my friend?
No, 100%, Justin. At the end of the day, this personnel is not good enough. People need to wake up and smell the coffee. Eric Kendricks is past his prime, okay? He is nowhere close to a $9 million linebacker. It just is what it is. A couple years ago, that wasn't the case. Well, it is now. Jordan Hicks was a nice experiment. You tried good leadership stuff, but it failed. Okay, it is what it is.
Yeah.
They both need to go. They need to completely wipe clean the linebacker room for the starters. Asamoah needs to be a huge building block that they move on with long term. But absolutely, there is a lot of pieces needed for this defense. The one good thing I can say is they have guys from last year that you pray and hope become huge contributors. Lewis Seen, first-round pick last season, and we had that really unfortunate injury. It's going to be a lot to ask, but that's the sport. At the end of the day, you've got to come back and rebound. Andrew Booth, the cornerback out of Clemson last year, second-round pick, as well as a Caleb Evans out of Missouri, and then you got Brian Asamoah, as I alluded to earlier, from Oklahoma. At the end of the day, those are the guys you need to build up upon with one more class of foundation. As I've said, this defense needs a game changer. They need to go and find their TJ Watt. They need to go and find their Micah Parsons. That's how Dallas and Pittsburgh got back to being relevant defensively. It does not happen through free agent signings, okay? It is what it is. This defense has not had a legit elite piece added to it from the draft since 2015. That is pathetic. That has got to be one of the worst stretches in the entire NFL in that run. Like, I can think off the top of my head, even teams like Houston have had players come in, like this year with Derek Stingley, and then you had Jacksonville a couple years ago, Josh Allen. The Bills going to say Josh Allen, lol, even though it's the wrong one. The Vikings need to go and get a star defensive player. It is a requirement. They need a blue chipper. If he's there at 23, you go and take him.
I'm going to say this. There are a lot of holes to fill on this defense. I mean, realistically, I'm not saying completely blow every person out of here. I'm not saying don't bring Harrison Smith or Patrick Peterson back, but it's got to be at the right price. If
Agreed.
Patrick Peterson is looking to get one last payday, I'm not begrudging him that. He is an athlete that has put his body on the line for years to make a living. And if he feels that, you know what, this is my last shot of getting the bag before I retire, I will not begrudge him that. If he wants to come back on a very team-friendly deal, I'll absolutely take him back. But what did we say this time last year? No more sacred cows, no more legacy players getting legacy contracts, balloon payments, retirement parachutes, the whole shebang. I'm sorry. Eric Kendricks, you're a Ring of Honor player, but I'm sorry. I don't even know if I would want Eric Kendricks back if we switch back to the 4-3.
No.
And he could say, I'll take veterans minimum. I don't know. I've just seen him backpedaling. He recognizes it. He still has it up here.
Yeah.
His body's just failing him. He knows where the ball's going. How many times did he diagnose the plays against Saquon Barkley, and he just couldn't get to him until it was 12 yards down the field? I'm sorry, but it's time to go. It just is reality. I know we don't like to hear, we got to get rid of Eric Kendricks and Harrison Smith and Dalvin Cook and Adam Thielen. Listen, we all know Adam Thielen's story. If you haven't heard about it, just Google it. You know what? I heard he might be from the state of Minnesota. I heard he might have grown up idolizing Chris Carter and Randy Moss. Guess what? I love Chris Carter and Randy Moss too. But at some point, the liability that his salary cap number is versus the asset that he can be on the team, and I'm not just talking about him, just talking about him specifically right now. At some point, it just is what it is, and it's time to move on. And we can't continually give one more year to players because we have followed them for 6 to 10 years. We can't just continuously say, well, no, we can never get rid of Adam Thielen, and we can never get rid of Dalvin Cook. Who are you going to get that's better, and all these other things? The bottom line is this season was magical. It was fun. We don't have to give those wins back. We don't have to give the joy back that we felt when we had heart attacks almost every single week.
I could live with a few less of those next season.
A few less heart attacks. But the point is that it was fun and it was awesome. But if you want this team to move forward, I'm sorry, there's going to have to be some tough choices to make here. Yes. So speaking defensively, there's like one or two names that I'm okay. Yeah, if you can get Dalvin Tomlinson back, I'd like to have him back.
Agreed.
If you can work something out with Danielle Hunter and then actually put him in a position to actually utilize his skills, I'd like him back. Guys like DJ Wanham and Patrick Jones, they're just guys. I mean, okay, sure, whatever. But by and large, this defense needs an overhaul in the worst way. And I'm sorry, it's not just going to be about the defensive coordinator. We're not going to spend too much more time on it, but let's wrap it up by saying this. Give me the top name or two on your list of all these guys we're hearing about. Flores here and a couple of other guys that we who would you if you could pick right now? You could open up the checkbook. Who would you take? My
guy is Vic Fangio because, and I know a lot of people cringe when I say that because Ed Donatel was literally his right hand man. But at the end of the day, he's not the mastermind. He's not the guy that made the 3-4 what it is now in the modern NFL. And again, it is only 28% of the base anyway. You're playing a lot of 4-3 regardless. So that would be my guy. I don't think it's going to happen, but if you're dreaming and I want the one guy, it's Vic Fangio.
I'll say this. Vic Fangio would be probably on my short list. I would also say Flores would be on the short list. The bottom line is this. What I want in a defensive coordinator is somebody that is going to be able to utilize the talent whatever level that may or may not be, that is on this team, whatever decisions you make, who you decide to keep and who you decide to jettison. I want a scheme or a system or a coach that is adaptable to be able to put the players that we keep or the players we bring in the best possible positions. I don't want a coach who's going to say, I have to be 4-3 and this is how we're going to do it, or I have to be 3-4 and this is how we're going to do it. I want a guy in Mike Tomlin who, after one season as the defensive coordinator of a 4-3 with the Minnesota Vikings, went to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have been 4-3s for about 5 decades. Okay, excuse me, a 3-4 for decades, and said, you know what? I'm going to adapt to the players that I have. Radical concept, I know. So I don't care who it is. Yes, the two names we mentioned here are probably the two guys that we know the most. Raheem Morris, another one that I could listen to. But my point is, I want somebody who is actually going to utilize the players to the best of their ability. That is what I want more than anything else. If you heard the press conference from Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell, it was rather mundane to me. It was rather boring, and I get it. You want to have some class and some tactfulness. You don't want to just come out with your end-of-the-year presser and say that, yeah, we've let go of our defensive coordinator. But they really didn't tell us a whole lot. Any highlights you want to hit up real quick on this press conference before we go around the NFL and do some more Vikings talk, Mike?
Yeah, I do. And it's mainly one point, and the point they emphasized and said throughout the press conference. Championship standard. And at the end of the day, we can talk about this, that, and the other. But I like the fact that they realize this defense needs to change if we want to do anything legitimate. They know if we're going to win with Kirk, this defense needs to be overhauled. If I see Eric Kendricks or Jordan Hicks back next season, they lied to us. It really is that simple. And I'll sit here and say this right now.
Yeah.
If the Vikings do not spend at least 5 draft picks on defensive players, maybe 4, regardless.
Don't we only have 5 to 4 in the first place?
I expect to trade down anyway, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Yeah.
But they got to go aggressive at it. You need to attack it. You did it last year. You hope that Louis Sean comes back healthy. I think he's going to make a good recovery for training camp. And it'll be hopefully a nice story. He comes back, maybe wins comeback player of the year. Who knows? But we need to attack this aggressively. The DC could be anybody. It could be Bill Belichick. With these pieces, it would be completely irrelevant. They need to get younger and faster immediately.
No, I don't disagree. Well, let's talk about some of the players on offense. I mentioned a couple of them, and Adam Thielen and Dalvin Cook here. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off. You're going to keep Justin Jefferson. You're most likely, in fact, I would say about 98%, unless you get blown away with a trade offer, Kirk Cousins is going to be the quarterback of this team.
Yes.
Like, love, or indifferent. You've got your stalwarts at the tackles with O'Neal and Darisaw. So let's talk about Cook. Let's talk about Thielen, and let's start off with Garrett Bradbury. Yes or no? You bringing Garrett Bradbury back, or are you ready to move on?
Oh, no. This isn't even a conversation. As far as I'm concerned, Justin, if Kevin O'Connell can get that out of Garrett Bradbury, what can he do with an actual player who could pass block? Next question.
Next question. All right, Dalvin Cook. You bring him back? You trying to restructure his deal, or are you just ready to move on?
People are going to hate me. No, you get rid of Dalvin Cook. And honestly, the funny part is people think we could trade him. If we get a bag of footballs, I'll be mildly surprised. But with his cap hit, yeah, you move on immediately. Yes. Yes.
You don't try and restructure them and maybe move everything into a 1-year deal.
We've talked about this void year stuff. The word void years can absolutely get out of my mind, aside from Kirk, because at least he's a quarterback. I can live with that. Right. Not a running back. No, get rid.
So you're done.
Oh, yes. Done. I want a nice, cheap running back like I wanted before he signed the extension. Yes.
All right, fair enough. All right, we talked about Sacred Cows. We mentioned his name earlier. What do you do with Adam Thielen? Do you come to him and say, hey, do you want to stick around? Because if you do, you're going to have to understand the role that at this particular point in time, your skills have eroded. You're going to have to take a pay cut. Or do you just say, hey, you know what, Adam, why don't you give us a list of teams that you'd be happy to go to, and we'll see if we can swing out a deal. I mean, what's your conversation with his agent if you're Kwesi?
Okay. Goodbye. That's it. Thank you for the memories. Thank you. I just want to make this clear. This is not an attack on the person. It is a business. Mm-hmm. Did anybody in multiple different places throughout their careers cry and weep when a player needed to go except this franchise? I feel like we're the only team that cares this much about players that are at the end on terrible contracts. For God's sakes, for the love of God, I still have to see a picture of Joe Burrow wearing a Randy Moss jersey. That's where we're at as a fan base. We hold on to these really silly things that are irrelevant. Yes, Adam Thielen is a Minnesota boy. I get it. He's going to be a Ring of Honor player in 7 years' time from now. That's where it ends. Jared Allen didn't finish his career in Minnesota. Chris Carter, who had a better career, didn't finish his career in Minnesota. You move on. Yes.
I'll say this. A couple people have said to me, well, not even Randy. I'm like, first off, don't put Adam Thielen in Randy Moss's category, first of all. Okay.
Exactly.
Justin Jefferson, maybe. But Randy Moss was traded because Red McCombs was in the process of selling the team. He was as cheap as they get. And because he was due to pay out Randy Moss on March 3rd, at that time, a $7 million roster bonus. And he didn't want to spend $7 million when he was about to sell the team. And it's like, well, really, you couldn't negotiate $7 more million with the Wilf to say, hey, you're going to have to pay me back for this if you want to keep Randy Moss, or at least go to him. But all due respect to Red McCombs, who did bring us back to a certain level of respectability when he bought this team. I'm sorry, but no, I'm not listening to that. Having said all that, I'm not going to get into any off the field stuff about his wife tweeting out and putting stuff on Instagram. Listen, we all hope that we find somebody in our lives someday that'll go to bat for you like that, and that's all well and good. I'm not upset with her for having expressed her feelings. I would think that at some point we all need to understand. We need to understand that the Vikings don't owe Adam Thielen anything, and Adam Thielen doesn't owe the Vikings anything. It's a business. It's a situation of employment. Yes, it's great in corporate America if you work for the same place for 30 years and you got all kinds of loyalty and you spend your entire life at one job and you have this big old retirement party and they don't kick you out to pasture until you're ready to go. This is the NFL. This is a results-driven league. And unfortunately, you know what? For Adam to say, I'm going to balk a little bit about what Adam's saying about not getting as many opportunities because more went to JJ.
That's crazy.
He had the 36 most targets of any wide receiver in the NFL this year. The fact of the matter is his skills are starting to erode. He's not as fast as he used to be. He doesn't get as much separation. If he were willing to come back to be the third wide receiver, I'd love to have him. I'm not trying to kick him out the door, but I'm also being realistic about it here is to say, hey, you're not a number 2 wide receiver anymore. You're barely a number 3 wide receiver anymore. You're a possession receiver at best. So if you don't want to accept the new terms that the team would lay forward for you and you want to go somewhere else, I don't begrudge you for that either. But let's not pretend that you're still the 1B to Jefferson's 1A.
Yes, this isn't 2019. It's not. And this is the thing, as I've said, I know I'm not the biggest paying running backs guy fan. Thank you for the memories, Dalvin Cook, Eric Hendricks, and Adam Thielen. This is not about the person. People need to understand this. They're great leaders and great community people. But the reality is, as a fan, I want to win. And paying 30-year-olds is not how you win in the NFL. It really is that simple. No, and I know Dalvin Cook's 27. His body's beat up bad. But anyway.
Well, in running back years, he's 32. I mean,
exactly.
Let's just call it for what it is. I'm going to say it like this. I'm not Rob Brzezinski. I'm not a capologist. All I know is that this team with we talked about this a little bit off air. This team, when they hired Mike Zimmer, their first year, they went 7-9 in 2014. Their window started in 2015. They win the division. They should have won a playoff game, but for Blair Walsh. Although, let's call for what it is. There were other opportunities to have more than 9 points on the board. It didn't strictly come down to that missed field.
Even that drive. Just throw the ball in the end zone.
Yeah, on that drive, we got to the 20, so I guess we'll just stop here. Just like really outdoors on that stadium, but whatever the case may be. Okay, so you lose Teddy Bridgewater 2016. You bring in Sam Bradford, and the reason you can bring in Sam Bradford at $13 million is because you were fiscally responsible with your salary cap. End up going 8-8. We all know about 2017, and then Kirk Cousins in 18 and 19. That window closed in 2019 when they lost to the San Francisco 49ers in the division round of the playoffs. And for the last 3 seasons, they've been signing contract after contract that they probably shouldn't have done because this ownership group refuses to say, you know what, we're always going to compete. We are always going to spend every dime that we can, and we're going to go year to year, and we don't care about what else happens. The bottom line is the piper always needs to be paid, and the bill has come due with all of these restructures, all of these bloated contracts, and all of these void years. So at the end of it, we're going to have to accept that there's going to be some changes on this team. And some of our favorite players might not be there. I can listen to the argument of getting rid of Dalvin Cook cold turkey, moving on, whether you re-sign Alexander. Well, I'll ask you that here in just a moment. That'll be my next question to you. If you're going to get rid of Dalvin Cook, do you re-sign Alexander Madison? But regardless, it's time to move on from some of these older players. It's time to move in a different direction. It's time to trust that Kevin O'Connell wasn't just a fluke, even though that's everything everybody wants to say. Everything about this Viking season was fluke. Well, not everything. Were they a fluke Super Bowl contender? Probably. Yeah.
And we said that. And we said
that at about week 9, that they're not Super Bowl contenders, but they're playoff contenders. Can they build on that? I think they can build on it, but you can't keep throwing good money after bad, because you're just going to stay perpetually mediocre. You're going to stay perpetually up against the salary cap. And at some point, you can't keep throwing good money after bad. So I'll start with that. You said you want to get rid of Dalvin Cook. All right. What do you do with Madison? What do you do for your starting running back? Do you turn it over to the young guys? Do you bring Alexander Madison back on a 2-year deal? What are you thinking, Mike?
So this is how I evaluate it. It really is this simple. It comes down to the dollars and cents, because that's what this business is. People don't like that, but I like that Quest is a business guy for a reason, because he's not going to keep legacy and name into it and where they went in the draft. With Madison, you give him a 2-year deal. You say $7 million, 3.5 a year. If he says no, okay, that's it. That's okay. Goodbye. Go test the market, because you won't make more than that on this market with there being like 10 starting running backs out there. I bet you he takes it. So if that happens, you keep him. If not, you go and get young at the position. Like, at the end of the day, a lot of people don't like when I say this. Tony Pollard, so I feel horrible for him for the high ankle sprain he just sustained yesterday. That guy's a superstar. He went in the 4th round. This is where the NFL is. Running backs don't go high anymore. They don't. Yes, there's the occasional Etienne, okay, or Najee Harris. I get it. But for the most part, the good running backs in the NFL do not go in the 1st round anymore. And so, yeah, you got to get cheaper at the position. This is, if you're going to keep Kirk, you've got to draw the line somewhere. And running back is one of those spots. I'm sorry, it is.
So, do you draft one, or do you just stick with what you got with Alexander Madison? If Alexander Madison doesn't come back, do you just going to go with Ty Chandler and Kenny Nwangwu, or are you going to try and draft one here with our minimal resources in the draft that we already spent on that defense?
It's a good question. I would try to poach Rashad Penny on a 1-year deal for $2 million. Because if he could stay healthy, you're talking about huge upside. The guy could be a 1,200-yard running back. That's what I would do. If he says no, then draft one. But I would try to get cheeky in the market. There's a lot of guys out there, Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert. You can get one cheap that could be a really good starter for a year. And that's all you need with a running back. Just 1 year. You don't got to overthink it.
So part of the issues that I have about just simply jettisoning Dalvin Cook, although I don't disagree with the comments that you've made about his salary cap number and his production at this point, is some of the dip in his production because he's running behind a mediocre at best. I know they're better than they were last year, and they're halfway decent at run blocking, but there were plenty of times where Dalvin Cook was getting the ball and he didn't have much room to run with here. Do you not see some of those problems translating to whoever it is if it's not Dalvin Cook, or at this point is the salary cap just too much where none of that matters to you, Mike?
I think that's somewhat relevant, but I think it's a very small percentage. I know it was against Chicago, but we've seen when Madison comes in games, he looks stronger than Dalvin Cook, more powerful. I just think, again, the wear and tear has gotten to him, and I don't even blame him for that. His body has taken a beating, an absolute beating. And like I said, all power to him for playing for us all year long when he was hurt. We know he was hurt. He was not 100% at all. But the reality is, I think the line is a part of it, but I think it's a small percentage because they're a decent run-blocking line. And again, Tony Pollard does mourn with that. He just does. We had a better running back, and I know he was 6th in rushing yards. I'm well aware. There's guys that are a lot better. If you go and look at his yards over expected, I'm by far not a geek or analytics guy. He was really, really bad. He's got to do more, and he hasn't. It is okay to say a guy's diminished and we need to move on. It's okay, people. They're not going to hate you if you say it's okay to move on.
Before we talk about the previous weekend's games in the divisional round of the playoffs, because you know what? There are still playoffs going on, even though the Vikes are winning. I'm going to put up Viking Jerome's comment, say dollars and cents and balanced teams win. Well, there is that. And there is a bit of luck to it. 3 out of the 4 teams that are playing in the NFC, AFC championship games this weekend have quarterbacks that are on what? rookie scale contracts. Now, the other one was a Hall of Famer. So that's the key.
We're talking about Brock Purdy, right?
Yeah, we're talking about Brock Purdy. We're talking about Jalen Hurts.
No, I know. I was being sarcastic in the last part, but
anyway. I know. But the point I'm making here is that I will never go back in time and say it was a mistake to do the moves that they made in 2018. Not just Kirk Cousins, but all of the moves that they have made there. But at some point, you had to know that, okay, we are throwing good money after bad. I've used that expression a couple times here now. We're trying to keep a window. We're trying to force open a window that is all but shut. And we did nothing but go 7-9 and 7-9 before we finally got rid of it. It's the same thing I said then. Nobody's going to give back that wild card victory win against the New Orleans Saints with Kyle Rudolph catching the jump ball in the overtime. But let's call it for what it is. If they don't win that game, Mike Zimmer's gone. And then this process that started this year would have started 2 years ago. And all I am saying is, yes, there's the mentality of, well, we won 13 games, and if we can just improve the defense here and a little bit there, we can compete again. We're spinning our wheels in purple purgatory in this cesspool of mediocrity. They're an above-average team. They're not a horrible team. They're a good team. They're not a great team. The separation between the Vikings, the Eagles, the 49ers, the Bengals, and the Chiefs in particular, yeah, we went toe-to-toe and won a game against Buffalo, but if you played that game 10 times, I think the Vikings win 3 at most. But let's just call it for what it is.
Yeah.
They're pretty far away. So all I'm saying is let's be smart. Let's not just say, oh, no, we're just this – we're not just this close, ladies and gentlemen. We're just not. Having said all that, before we get to around the NFL to wrap up this year tonight, it's not going to take too much time here tonight. I mean, it's the offseason. We got plenty of time to do stuff here. Give us your thoughts. I'm pretty sure a lot of people who have followed you know. But option A, you play Kirk Cousins last season on his contract out. You extend Kirk Cousins for 2+ years, whether it's 2, 3, 5, I don't care, anywhere 2 or more. Or you trade Kirk Cousins. Which one are you doing, Mike?
It's A, and I know you don't like that answer, and that's okay, right? We disagree on this topic. I think we will to the end of time. But, at the end of the day, I look at it like this. I know that Kirk Cousins has been here since 2018. I get it. But again, he has not had an OC for 2 straight years. I'm not trying to be the excuse police. I just want to see a quarterback be given a proper, normal situation. Patrick Mahomes has had his OC his entire career. Am I comparing the two? Absolutely not.
Certainly hope not.
No, I'm not Joe. Don't worry. And in all seriousness, we need to just give him this last year, just because I look at it like this, Justin, and we could disagree on this. That's fine. I think you let Cousins ride it out. You play all 4 of the conference finalists this upcoming season. If he goes and balls out, then you see that maybe he can turn a clock. Maybe he can be a Rich Gannon. I don't know. But Kirk has gotten better every year. He has. With ball security, with big moments. Like, there's something to be said about that. Now, again, this is his moment next year, because I think the defense will be respectable. For the love of God, I hope so. Just don't be god-awful and keep us all in tears having to watch 31 straight points, basically, from a New York Giants team that had one 30-point game all year. But this is the way I look at it. You run it out. You build all defense. You get rid of the fat. And I know when people say, I trim the fat, that's rude, Mike. That's mean. Well, sometimes you can be a little bit ruthless in this business. It is a business. You get rid of the guys that are aging. You give it one last kick of the can. And I know you hate kicking the can down the road. One last time. If he fails, it's over. If he succeeds, then he deserves respect. I actually love the fact that we're playing all 4 conference championship finalists next year, because then we'll know before the playoffs. There's no question marks. We will know, are we for real or are we a joke? No in between.
Well, I'm gonna go in order. My first choice would be to trade him, not because I think he's bad or not because I think, we'll just draft a rookie quarterback and we'll be into the NFC Championship. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is right now, if we're looking at it from a business sense, every business has assets and liabilities, and at some point assets depreciate, and at some point assets have a resale value, and that resale value has a tendency to go down. This is the highest that Kirk Cousins' resale value is going to be. So the argument isn't about getting rid of Kirk Cousins per se. It is about, okay, with where this team is at and how many holes it has, is this the time to capitalize on trying to sell off an asset that you know is going to depreciate, that you know you've only got a couple years left? I don't want to hear about Tom Brady playing until he's 45. Stop with that.
No, they're not the same. They're not the same at all.
No. Joe's not in this chat. But the point I'm making here is, so that would be my first choice. My second choice would be to play out the contract, as you said. I don't care which one of those two options they take, as long as it's one of those two. What I do not want to see, and again, this is not about, what Kirk Cousins is or what he isn't. My stance on him is pretty clear. I don't want him to be re-signed to another 2 or 3 year extension where all we're doing is kicking the can down the road and, clogging up our salary cap some more. And again, I know he's not the only one that takes up parts of the salary cap, but the fact of the matter is he does take up the biggest piece. That's just the reality of the situation. And I'm not saying he's bad. I think he's a very, very good quarterback. Do I think that he has the capability to overcome the inevitable roster deficiencies that come with having such a high percentage of the salary cap? Not really. I mean, he does on some levels in the regular season against, mediocre to bad teams, but I just don't want to get locked into another 3 to 4 years with this.
Agreed.
I'm ready at this point to say, all right, I will accept your premise as to let's give it one more shot with Kirk Cousins as our quarterback for one more season. And frankly, that's the overwhelming favor to what is most likely going to happen. Mm-hmm. But what I don't want to see is another extension done, because I think at this point that would just be, again, throwing good money after bad. But we got plenty of time to talk about it once the Super Bowl is done, once we get some other teams out here deciding what they're going to be doing. All is well and good here. All right, let's talk real quick. Pretty good divisional round of the playoff weekend. Some would say that that's the best football weekend of the year. Some would say conference title. Some would say Super Bowl. But when you got 4 games with 8 really, really good teams, supposedly, you're going to have some pretty good matchups. And 3 out of the 4 lived up to the billing. That New York Giants team that we somehow lost to, that we barely beat the first time around on a last-second field goal, lost to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, it's no shame losing to Philly. We lost to Philly earlier this year. 38-7.
They did what we did. They did the 2017.
Boy, you couldn't have scored one more field goal, or you couldn't have let them score one more time. Nope. They've got to mirror us and lose 38-7. And what bugs me about that game isn't that the Giants lost. That isn't what gets me. But what gets me is that this defense was so bad. This team made Daniel Jones look like Joe Montana. He had 15 touchdowns and 5 interceptions this year, and his 2 best career games. He's going to get a massive contract, but for playing the Minnesota Vikings twice. What bugged me more than anything was that they didn't even put up a fight against Philadelphia, and they were a division rival, and everybody thought that was going to be the game that might be closer than anticipated because divisional rivals, familiarity, and all that other stuff. Philadelphia absolutely destroys the New York Football Giants. We'll get back to the matchup with San Francisco here, but just get your quick thoughts on that game, Mike.
Well, I'll say this. I hope they outscored themselves and are ready for, to come back down to reality just in time for San Francisco. Because, man, do I want to see Philly out of the playoffs. No, they crushed them. I mean, there's really nothing else to say. As I said about the 2017 game, as a recap, not many years ago, last year, it was over at halftime. That game was over at halftime, and that's all I got to say about that. Daniel Jones, you came down to reality.
Is Philly that good, or are the Giants just that mediocre, which therefore means we're that mediocre?
I'll be honest. I think it is a little bit of both. I just think our defense really was that bad. It really was that bad.
Kansas City holds on and beats the Jaguars 27-20. Trevor Lawrence didn't look particularly well, but the Jaguars had plenty of opportunities in that game. That fumble at the end really was the final nail in the coffin. I know they did with the old backdoor cover there. They were 8.5-point underdogs, and they got it to within 7 with that last moment field goal there. But your thoughts on Kansas City? Patrick Mahomes, little injury there. We know he's going to play this coming Sunday against the Bengals there. But your thoughts on the Jaguars, their season, the turnaround they've had with their new head coach in football, Fabio, actually looking competent now that he's not under the tutelage of Urban Meyer.
Man, I really love that nickname. But anyway, the Jaguars choked. I mean, it is what it is. And you could say, well, Kansas City was at home, blah, 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 blah. They choked. They had so many chances to go and take that game by the scruff of the neck, and they blew it. Chad Henne led a 98-yard drive. You got to be kidding me. And I know Pacheco was like half of it. I'm well aware. He threw you a golden nugget, and somehow they didn't pick it off. That would have changed the game. If they pick off Henne there, the momentum, not only in his head, because he finished the rest of that half. You'll forget that. He played the rest of that half.
Yeah.
The mental well-being of him at that moment. If he threw a pick, would have been horrible. But as you said, football Fabio kind of choked. Like, let's just say it as it is. That interception was brutal at the end of the game, and I get he was trying to make a play. Almost like when you have pressure and you just throw it up, it doesn't matter if you throw it for 3 yards because the other option is going to be an incompletion or a pick. But
Or maybe a
anyway,
penalty.
maybe that's the only hope in it, literally you have. But yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. But at the end of the day, Doug Peterson is a great coach. I knew he would be. No surprise. I still don't understand why the Eagles fired him. In fact, that's another reason why I can't stand the Eagles. Who fires a Super Bowl winning coach like a year later? Like, wow, that's pathetic by Jeffrey Laurier. And I hope they pay for it when they play the Niners. But no, good on the Jags. They had a good season. Do I think they're going to get back? No, I think they'll be like the Browns a couple years ago, where they take a bit of a downturn from here.
I'll save the one that hurt you the most for last. The 49ers ultimately hold on and win against the Dallas Cowboys. Mike McCarthy's the bumbling idiot that he always is. I don't know what on the planet that last play was, and I get it. You had your dumb butt tight end on the last two previous plays, not make sure that he's going forward to get out of bounds to stop the clock, not make sure that his foot was down to where it would have been a 60-yard Hail Mary, which would have actually had a 2% chance of succeeding, as opposed to a 0% chance that last play had. But that San Francisco defense, they shut down the Cowboys, and we can talk a little bit about Dak Prescott and his shortcomings and all that stuff. You know, a lot of people do want to compare him to Kirk, and there's some very good comparisons there. But that is going to be – I don't know which game I'm going to enjoy more, 49ers against the Eagles or, the Bengals at the Chiefs. But it's going to be a classic to see a defensive first – and I know Kyle Shanahan's an offensive coach, but the strength of that team is their defense. Their offense is a very good scheme, and it is a very well-coached unit, but that defense of San Francisco, and I've been saying it since the double doink game against the New Orleans Saints, is that's the team that is going to be the worst possible matchup for the Vikings. The 49ers ultimately survived despite their kicker having some faux pas there. Let's just get right into it. Talk to me about the San Francisco game and what your thoughts are on the NFC Championship game with them going to Philly.
I think this team is just so talented. I mean, they're fantastic.
Yeah. They
have talent everywhere. And they've had to use depth. And that depth plays better than most of our starters defensively.
Well, it
is incredible how good they are. D'Amico Ryans will not be the defensive coordinator of the Niners after the season. There's just no chance. I'd be utterly shocked. Yeah.
We'll take him if he doesn't get a head coaching job, okay?
By all means, but if you give him a raise, he won't take it. But anyway, nor would I blame him. Why would you want to go from our defense, from what you were working with?
Yeah, exactly.
But Kyle Shanahan, I will say this. You better stop, and you with this mentality of being afraid, because that New England-Atlanta game all those years ago, it comes out. It's like a tick. He can't get it out of his head. It comes in, and then he starts coaching really very conservative. And they could screw them. You do that against Philly,
you're toast.
You're probably toast. But I know this is, a lot of people credit Shannon, and fair enough, you should. But Brock Purdy is not fazed by the moment. He is so good.
He's relevant now.
This guy should have been. He has been so good this season for the Niners. He has upgraded them from Jimmy Garoppolo, which I never thought would happen. Credit to him. But the difference is the production for George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey. I mean, they're incredible. They really are. They're probably the best running back / tight end duo in the entire league. It's absolutely fun to watch. And Trent Williams is going to walk into the Hall of Fame with his eyes closed because it's going to be that easy.
All right, Mike, I've delayed the inevitable as long as humanly possible. Your Buffalo Bills not only lose, but they weren't even really that competitive against the not quite as good as Kirk Cousins, Joe Burrow. Copyright to a good friend of ours. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. We all have Cousins, but let's stop pretending that he's better than Burrow.
Even close, by the way. No. But anyway,
Joe Burrow, he just has the Bills' number. Especially in the playoffs. I mean, this guy
only 1-0. That was the first time they ever played.
Excuse me, I beg your pardon. Joe Burrow has this playoff thing figured out because realistically, they should have won that Super Bowl. A couple of back and forth, and a couple of great plays at the end by the Rams. But this kid, he's just phenomenal. And I'm not going to put him ahead of Patrick Mahomes yet. And in fact, where I was confused is actually Joe Burrow has Kansas City's number, and so once again, Kansas
Yes.
City will have to slay the demon that is. But they just straight dominated that game. They didn't just win; they ran all up and down the field on those guys. First down, short, quick passes here. Buffalo couldn't do anything offensively or defensively against that team, and Cincinnati absolutely took it to them there. Talk to me. I know it's painful because I know you're also the closet Bills fan. That's your second team, but talk to me about Cincy and Buffalo there, Mike.
Yeah, no, I support the Bills. I do not have a second team. Just
I'm
so
sorry.
everyone knows, I don't want to be made out to be that guy because that's the last thing I
We
do
know,
on
Mike.
Vikings Twitter.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's what happens when you get dominated in the trenches. I mean, that's what happens.
With backup offensive linemen.
Yep. I don't know. Tell me they didn't miss Von Miller without telling me they didn't miss Von Miller. My God. I didn't realize it was going to be that bad. They got embarrassed at home. That was a joke. Look, I think Joe Burrow's fantastic. I think he's elite. I think he's franchise quarterback, all that stuff. But, man, they made it easy. Leslie Frazier. Don't ever come back to Minnesota for the love of God with the zone you were playing because that gave me nightmares.
No.
That was really,
and
really
absolutely
bad.
not.
And this is the kicker. If anyone should be fired after the season for the Bills, it's probably Leslie Frazier.
Yeah,
because
I don't know if he survives.
He screwed them. He screwed them last year at Kid City. I don't want to hear that they had timeouts. You play tight coverage. It's 13 seconds for the love of God. It's 13 seconds. It's not that hard to defend for 13 seconds. And now he plays this ugly zone. He didn't learn his lesson. He clearly didn't learn his lesson. And Sean McDermott, you're on thin ice because this league is an offensive coach league now, and you're falling behind the times. You better whip Ken Dorsey into shape as your offensive coordinator, or you're both going.
All right, looking forward. We'll start with the NFC. San Francisco have a shot. They got to travel all the way over to Philadelphia. We know what kind of rough crowd it is to be playing in that stadium. Again, Jalen Hurts, he just looked absolutely unstoppable. Before I do that, we'll give a shout out here. What's up, Bandino? How you doing? Thanks for house therapy going. Well, after a week, you know what? One thing I forgot to say earlier is as much as we didn't like seeing the Vikings lose last week, they would have had half on.
Oh, yeah. That would have caused therapy. The game against San Francisco, my God.
Had we won that Giants game, I don't know what the heck we'd be talking about right now because that would have been utterly embarrassing. But, Bandino, thanks for coming. Let's hit that like button, hit that share button, y'all, if y'all could, and help us beat that YouTube algorithm, as our boys have always taught us to say. But having said all that, looking ahead, Philly, San Francisco. Does San Francisco have enough defensively to keep Jalen Hurts in check, and can Brock Purdy do it on the road in Philly?
I'm going to go Niners, but, man, I'm terrified of Philly. I don't like Philly. I really, really do not like Nick Sirianni. I think he is an absolute jerk, and I cannot stand his guts.
Yeah.
But the Niners cannot be afraid. They need to allow Purdy to go and win that game. If they do what they did in Dallas in that second half, you're not winning. You're not. Now, of course, that Niners defense could cause Jalen Hurts all sorts of problems that he's not been caused really all year. Mm-hmm. And that's what will be interesting about this matchup. They're both young guys. This is the youngest matchup in championship history with the quarterback pairing. Who is the man that steps up for the moment? It would not shock me if it's Brock Purdy. This guy ain't faced. He is not faced. He's going to treat it as another game. Jalen Hurts, there's something to be said about having it so easy, just like Dak last week.
Right.
Or like, oh no, what's going on? This was not happening last week. If they get punched them out early, I've said this about the Eagles. They're very good. They might be the best team in the league, but when they get punched in the mouth, they have not responded well.
Right.
If the Niners can go up early, that's the key.
I'll say this to everything that's been said here. All that talk we had all season about the Vikings being battle tested didn't entirely pan out the way we had hoped it to. But I agree with you. Philadelphia, there's a reason why their hockey team was called the Broad Street Bullies a long time ago. Yep. When you punch the bully back and you get that bully stung just enough to say, whoa, 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 that's not what normally happens. How do they come back? How prepared are they? Because San Francisco is going to bring another level of intensity, of physicality that Philadelphia hasn't seen this year. All year. And with all due respect to the Dallas Cowboys who played them twice, they're going to be another level of physicality that Philadelphia has not seen. Now, Philadelphia's got the home field advantage. They don't have to travel. All of those things, particularly with San Francisco having to travel as far as they do. So I want San Francisco to win. That is who I want to win because, I just hate, Philly because I just can't stand their fans thinking all of this. Oh, I got to go. Bandito's got to go to Eagles are going to Clinton. What a tough game, matchups all over the field. Yeah, no, I don't necessarily disagree. I think Philly's in for a rude awakening, and they still may come out on top in this game. But I think San Francisco is going to give them all they've got to handle. And to what has been said, if Brock Purdy can just keep it together, and to your point about Kyle Shanahan, stop being afraid to win. When you play not to lose, you lose. You talked about it earlier with that Atlanta Super Bowl against the New England Patriots. Saw a little bit of it last week against Dallas. And I get it. You make a mistake against them. That defense could score very easily on you. You cannot afford to play conservative against the Philadelphia Eagles because if you play tentatively against a bully, the bully's going to wear you out. Yep. You punch the bully in the face, even if you swing and miss, okay, but come out swinging.
Put the fear in them.
Yep. Yes. Now, to the other matchup in the AFC, you got the Cincinnati Bengals going back to the Kansas City Chiefs. One more time, a rematch of last year's AFC Championship game, 5th straight AFC Championship game for the Kansas City Chiefs, 2nd straight for the Bengals. I'm going to say it like this. My official pick is the Cincinnati Bengals. I think if Patrick Mahomes was 100% healthy, I would probably lean Kansas City, but I think it's going to be a dogfight. It's going to be mano-a-mano. It's going to be two heavyweight quarterbacks. I think they're the two best quarterbacks in the game. With all due respect, Joe Burrow has moved past Josh Allen, in my opinion, at this particular point, and Brady and Rodgers and the other legacy guys. Sure. They moved down. This is the two best quarterbacks in the league. What do you see going down in KC, Mike?
I will say this before I get into the game. It's a triangle. Would I be shocked in a year's time we're talking about Josh Allen being – that is going to be insane for so many years, that AFC between those three. It's going to be nuts.
Assuming Stephon Diggs doesn't tear Buffalo down, but that's a whole nother
Oh, shocker. Who would have saw that coming? No. Not us or anything, but anyway.
Go to Purple and Gold for days and check out my latest short if you don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway, I digress. Go ahead.
All right. To the game. Jimi Hendrix used to have a song many, many years ago. Hey, Joe. I just don't see how Joe Burrow and this Bengals team does not go into Kansas City and beat them. I mean, they beat them when they had Tyreek Hill. They beat them when they were better offensively, potentially. They know how to limit running quarterbacks. Look what they did with Josh Allen last week.
Yeah.
That was incredible. It was a masterclass. It really was. Mahomes is now injured. He's got that high ankle sprain. It's not going to recover over, in 1 week. He's going to be hobbling out there. So one hit, that also changed it. Even if it doesn't knock him out of the game, if that thing's hurting more and he has to really be a pocket passer, can't even do anything mobility-wise, they're in big trouble. And again, I don't like this Chiefs defense. I've said it all year. They're overrated. And they got exposed versus Jacksonville. But as you said, Football Fabio did not take advantage.
Right.
Joe Burrow will.
Yes.
I promise you of that. Yes. He will. I got the Bengals winning.
Well, Bandito's got a good point. Can any team stop Travis Kelce? I don't think any team can stop him, but I think without Tyreek Hill, who they, as you mentioned, I had beaten with Hill and Kelce before, that's one less weapon. Okay, Valdez-Scantling, okay, he's nice. And, okay, yeah, Valdez-Scantling is a nice wide receiver when he's playing with Aaron Rodgers in his prime or he's playing with Patrick Mahomes in his prime, but big deal. I don't think they stop Kelce. I think Kelce goes off in this game, but I don't think that Kansas City is going to have enough. But I'm just going to be sitting back and relaxing and enjoy two great games. But I agree. What Allen and Burrow and Mahomes remind me of, and I don't know if you're a fan of tennis, but
a little bit. I don't know where you're going with this.
It reminds me of in their prime where you had Roger Federer, Rafa Nadal, and Novak Djokovic. Yeah. And yes, for a while the rivalry was just Federer and Nadal, and then Djokovic came along and made that three triangle where it was always just like, okay, who's going to get the one seed in this tournament so that they only have to face one of these two, and which of the other two are going to have to face each other and then face the one seed at the end. But having said all that, Cincinnati's defense is no joke. They're not the Zim Reapers, but they are a solid defense. And like you said, they contain Josh Allen. And with Patrick Mahomes being a little bit injured, I see the same thing happening. So my official picks are I'm picking Cincinnati for sure, and they're who I hope ultimately wins the Super Bowl. They're the team that I'm backing. Usually when the Vikings are out, it's ABGB, which is anybody but Green Bay. But since Green Bay is out, now it's anybody but Philadelphia because, again, I just can't stand that fan base. It's not cool to throw full cans of beer at people. That's not mental toughness. That's not being a tough sports guy town. That's just being stupid, and you'd get arrested for assault. Did that in anywhere else in public besides a sporting event. So I'm just anti-Philly at this point. So I'm hoping for San Francisco. I do think that San Francisco is going to make it a very, very close game. I think they have the capability of going into Philly, but my official pick is that it's going to be Philly and Cincinnati, all Midwest. Well, technically Philadelphia's in the East, but whatever. That's all well and good. But having said that, I really hope San Francisco and Brock Purdy find a way to go into Philly and do what we couldn't. And I cannot wait to sit and watch the Cincinnati and Kansas City game. That's just going to be two heavyweights, Ali and Frazier, whatever terms you want to use, whatever cliches you want to use. It's going to be a heavyweight fight, and it's pretty much going to be whoever has the ball last. I would be shocked if Cincinnati went into Kansas City and blew out the Chiefs, and I'd be surprised if the Chiefs blew out Cincinnati. I think it's going to be a one-score, last possession, whoever has the ball last kind of a game there, Mike. So final thoughts on episode 1 of Skol for Days with Day and Mike, off-seasons edition. Don't know if we're going to be on every Monday, but we'll definitely be on up until the Super Bowl, and then when the off-season festivities begin with free agency and draft speculation, we'll still be producing content here on Purple and Gold for Days. So if you don't already subscribe, please do. Please hit the like button and help spread the word on the podcast here. Any final thoughts from divisional round or leading into the NFC-AFC Championship weekend, Mike?
Yeah, I got one. Quick and sweet. Kirk Cousins be like Andy Murray. Just give me one Grand Slam championship. That's all I got to say. That's
just one. Just one before we die. That's our motto. You're absolutely right. Well, do want to thank everybody for getting in the chat. Vikings, Jerome, Bandino, Dave, and a cast of thousands that joined us here this evening. Thank you kindly for joining us. Skol Vikes. Well, we don't have a game to play, so we can't win this game. But it's Skol for Days here. And this is Justin in Rochester with my compatriot, Mike Castellino. Just want to see the Vikings win a Super Bowl just once before we die. Thank you kindly and have a great rest of your evening. Skol Vikes.
Skol.